Good morning, good evening, or good afternoon, depending on where you're joining us from today. We'd like to welcome you to today's session of the Azure webinar series. Our topic today is Build Applications in Minutes with Power Apps in Azure. Before we get started, I'd like to go over a little bit of housekeeping. We do have subject matter experts with us today who will be answering questions in real time. So please pop any questions you might have into the Q&A window and we'll get to them as quickly as we can. On the top right-hand corner of your console, you'll find a resources area. And any links mentioned in this session will be easily accessible for you there. Right below the resources widget, you will find a survey. We would appreciate it if you would provide us some feedback around today's topic at the end of this session. Finally, this presentation is recorded and you'll receive a copy in your email within 48 hours. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to our speakers.
Hey everybody, I'm Pierce Bogan, Principal Program Manager in Developer Division, which Developer Division, surprise, makes lots of things to make your life easy as a developer. So that's things like IDEs and code editors such as Visual Studio, Visual Studio Code, and Visual Studio for Mac, languages and runtimes like .NET and TypeScript, as well as some Azure services. And I specifically work on developer tools for the Teams application platform, and I've been working with Haley and the Power Platform team on our effort to enable collaboration between citizen and professional developers.
Hi everyone, my name is Haley Huber. I'm a program manager on the Power Platform team. Hopefully some of you have heard of the Power Platform. Just mention in the chat just so I can get a good gauge of the audience if you've heard of it or not. But we'll be talking about what the Power Platform is today and how it's going to be super helpful for you to save a lot of time. So I'm super excited to introduce it if you haven't heard of it before. If you have, I'm excited to show you the new stuff we're doing so that you can extend your pro developer capabilities even further. And so with that, let's get started. Your time is incredibly valuable as a developer, and I'm sure you're going to tell me that you don't have enough hours in the day. I can't add more hours to your day, but what we can do is save a lot of those hours that you're currently having to go a lot faster and to automate a lot of the things that you're doing. There's this huge app gap challenge that we're experiencing in the world. There are such high demand for apps for developers, and there are not enough of you guys, and there are not enough hours in your day to handle all the demand that's coming. One of the things we're working on is rather than trying to create more developers out of thin air, we're trying to make your time go faster by giving you the tools from the Power Platform, the low-code platform, so that you can build these things faster and easier without even having to write too much code. There's a gap of more than 1 million developers that we're missing. So you guys are trying to fill that gap by developing faster, spending more time. And so today we're going to walk through how we can save you time and energy so that you can be faster, happier, and have more time with your family at the end of the day.
Thanks, Haley. Yeah, like as a developer, I think we've all been asked to build things and we just don't have time on our backlog to build things that are being asked of us. And so I think a really important thing to try and figure out is what types of applications are best for rapid application development and low code development. And I really like this chart because it really kind of breaks down for you. These are the types of applications that are best as pro developer applications. And these are the type of applications that are best for rapid application development. So you can see here some of the different pivots such as users, scale, architecture, and latency. And kind of when you evaluate your business scenario, you can look along each of these different pivots and decide, is this a scenario that's right for rapid application development, or should I build this as a pro developer application? And it's also worth noting that even within a particular scenario, you may have parts of your scenario that are totally applicable as a pro dev application and other parts of your application and scenario which are perfect for rapid application development. So for instance, and maybe you're building a field service application. Maybe you want to build a native mobile application in Xamarin with C# for iOS and Android, but you want to build a management experience as well, and you want to use Power Apps to actually create that management experience. So even within a particular scenario, you can segment your applications to try and achieve more within your organization.
So here's our proposal for you. Here are the tools we're going to give you to help you with that. So this is the Power Platform. So if you haven't heard of it, this is what it is. It's our low-code platform that connects to all of your data. It comprises of Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Virtual Agents, and we're not going to talk about it today, but we also have Power BI for business analytics. What these tools give you the capability to do is build apps in literal seconds. We're going to go through a demo here in a minute that shows you that we're going to create an app that's connected to your SQL database, or really you can connect it to any sort of data that you have wherever your data is stored. But today we're going to do SQL, and we're going to create a 3-page app in less than a minute and a half. So we'll walk through that in a second, so I can actually prove to you that I'm not lying. Another one we have is Power Automate. So for all of your workflows that you spend a long time creating code for, writing for things to happen, you can do that in seconds with a low-code solution. So simple if-then statements with drag and drops that connects to your data. And we'll look at some of the examples of that today as well. And finally, Power Virtual Agents. These are intelligent virtual agent bots. This is also built on Azure Bot Framework. So any investments that you currently have, if you switch over to PVA, you're not going to lose those investments. So these are awesome low-code solutions to save you a ton of time. And they're all built on, you can see below, the Common Data Service, Data Connectors, and AI Builder. So these are all capabilities that you can use within these services. And we'll show you today what they are, what they mean, and how we can truly use them to transform your day-to-day activities. So Power Apps is what we're going to start with today, and this is our low-code approach to building apps. As you can see in the right here, it feels sort of like PowerPoint. So if you're familiar with PowerPoint, you can easily build an app in seconds. This sort of just basically saves you time. You can customize it. You can do all the things that you could do as if it were a PowerPoint. And there's also the function bar. So there is a little bit of Excel in there as well. But if this is not enough for you, because this is our low-code solution, but you guys are pro developers, so I'm not just trying to pitch the low-code solution because you aren't citizen developers, we can extend it with pro dev capabilities, which is what Pierce is going to help us walk through today to show how these really work together. It's not necessarily always low-code or pro-code, it's a fusion between the two, where you get the best of both worlds. And one of the best parts of Power Apps that we offer is our connections to all of your data. Right now, we have over 350 out-of-the-box connectors where you can connect your Power App or your Power Virtual Agents or your Power Automate to wherever your data is stored with simple clicks and authentication. And I'll show you how to do that as well in a second. If you don't see what you're looking for out of the box, it's very easy to build a connection yourself. We're going to create a custom connector today in one of our demos. And so Pierce is going to show us how to do that as well. But right now, there's already 350 right out of the box that's super easy to use. And we're going to use that today in this next demo that we're going to walk through. We're going to connect to our SQL database. So this is what we're going to start with in our first demo right now. We are going to start in Azure Portal, which is where a lot of our developers live right now. This is one entry point to get connected with our data. We can also start in Power Apps and connect to data from there. And so I'm going to show you both ways how to do it. But today we're going to start in the Azure portal. And this is going to be our first demo on Azure Data Connectors. I hope everyone's familiar with this. This is the Azure portal. And so I'm in my SQL database here. And on the left-hand navigation side, I see 3 of our offerings for Power BI, Power Apps, and Power Automate. Today we're going to do Power Apps. And I'm going to show you, this is going to be less than a minute and a half, and we're going to have an app already created for us connected to our SQL data. It's going to be 3 pages and fully customizable. So I'm going to start the timer here just to prove what I'm claiming. I'm selecting Get Started. It's going to name my app for me, but we're going to call this Demo today. And I have to select the table that I'd like to base it off of. Now selecting Create, we'll look at the timer. And right now it's connecting to my data. So it's going to create an app for me that's 3 pages long. We're going to have all of the entries in that table that I selected. We're going to be able to see the details and click through each of those entries. We're going to be able to search the entries, and we are going to be able to edit, delete all those entries from our SQL table, and it's going to update inside of the SQL DB. So this is not just a fake UI slapped on top. This is actually going back and forth and communicating in real time. So this gives your citizen developers the capabilities to be able to edit things when they don't know how to write code, and you can do this super fast and easy. And that took us 1 minute to do, and so we already have a full app right here in 1 minute, which could have taken weeks, days, months before this. So this is hopefully going to save a lot of time. Let's see what we actually built just now in that 1 minute. So I'm going to play the app. Here's my app with all of the entries that are in my SQL table, and I can search for different items. So I have myself as an owner of one of these stores. I searched my name, and there it comes up. Let's go back to all of our entries. So here's the first entry. We can click into it, and here's all of the details. We'll show you how to edit this. We can delete it, we can edit, and I can change the dates, the times. So here's our screens. Now just to prove what's happening, here's our connection. So in here, I'm seeing all of the data connections that I have going on. So this is my SQL server that I've connected to. When I clicked the create the app, it created this connection for me behind the scenes. Now, what if you don't want to create a SQL connection? What if you want to add some other connections? Because I understand just a one table app might not be the most useful item, but this is a good example of something you can create in a matter of minutes. But let's say we want to create another connection to any of our other 350 different data connectors. Let's just search Azure. I can connect to Azure AD. Just simply pressing connect here, I could connect to it and I can get all my data in there. Or how about Azure Blob Storage? I have a whole bunch of options here that I'm already connected to, or I can add a brand new connection with just including my account name and access key, and signing in, it will connect and I will get access to all of that data that's stored in Azure Blob and be able to use it and manipulate it in this app. Now, when I share this app, anyone who I share this app with will also be able to access that data. So you don't need to go into several different places to make sure everyone has access. You give them access by sharing this app. Some of the cool features of Power Apps that'll save you time. You can change the theming, so we can make it simply by clicking a button. We can change the colors. Everything is customizable in the functions bar, so we can change the name. So this is our table. But looking at some of the more interesting capabilities, aside from just the colors and titles and names, we can add in AI Builder. So this is one example of something that's going to save you a lot of time as a pro developer. You don't need to create your own AI models. In 15 minutes, you can train and create a fully functioning AI model that can do business card reader, receipt processor, form processor, object detector, and text recognizer. And we'll talk about this a little bit more in the future in this presentation, but this is super fun, super easy that you're able to do inside of your app. You can also add mixed reality, or you can add galleries and add more data. We can add custom components in here as well. Or one of my favorite things is Power Automate right inside here. So you have multiple functions of the Power Platform within each other, all working together. So we can create a Power Automate flow that will set off and trigger some sort of if-then. So for example, if I wanted to know every time a different data entry was edited in here or deleted, I could set up a new flow to let me know and notify me. That's just one example. But if we select Create Flow, we can browse hundreds of different templates that Power Automate suggests for us, specifically looking at Power Apps buttons. So anything that connects to Power Apps, it's already filtered for us. So we can see a lot of different options of things that we can create flows for without writing a single line of code. This is all super easy, less than 10 minutes. You can create an automation that will set off a workflow for you. No code, no time, all done for you. So just in a few minutes, let's recap what we've done. We created an app that's fully customizable and connected to our data in a minute and a half. We can also connect to a ton of different data sources, over 350. Now, I bet you're wondering, what if where I'm storing my data isn't already in here? What if I'm not seeing it here? One of the easiest things is to create a custom connector, which we'll walk through later, as I've mentioned. And so there's lots of different pro dev capabilities that you can use on top of Power Apps. So it's fully customizable for what you want and will meet you right where you are. Hopefully that gave you an idea of some of the Azure data connectors and how Power Apps works and how it can save you some time. But one of the big things is how we're going to use a fusion between the pro developer and the citizen developer. It's not one or the other. It's about working together and a fusion between the two. We're trying to build a no-cliff app experience so we can work together, the pro developer and the citizen developer together, to create the best possible app in the least amount of time. Pierce?
Yeah, I love the demo you just showed, Haley, because it's such a great example of this collaboration between the pro dev and the citizen developer. You took some data that was in a pro dev data source in Azure SQL and you imported that into a Power App. And I know as a developer, all of the time that takes. That's going in, actually fetching data from that database. That's doing the data binding to the UI. That's building the screens to actually present that UI. And sometimes you don't need all that. Sometimes as a pro developer, you don't have to go and do all those things. You can leverage citizen developers. And so I even think this simple database scenario is a great example of a collaboration between a pro developer and a citizen developer. And I'm going to show some other scenarios throughout the rest of this presentation and a few demos as well as to how we can even deepen this collaboration further. So Haley just laid out this collaboration between citizen developers and pro developers and how that enables both of us to focus on the projects we enjoy most and are most impactful to our organization. So we call these scenarios that kind of have a mix of both low and pro code components fusion development. So in practice, what does this look like? So when you're building applications, you know that those applications have building blocks, and you're probably using many of these things across different types of applications you're building. There's APIs, there's UI controls, there's data sources. And these are things you're probably leveraging in multiple applications. And we can enable fusion development as pro developers by architecting our applications for maximum reuse of these code components, and then exposing them to the Power Platform for citizen developers to leverage. So in one scenario, I may have an Azure SQL database backed by APIs built with Azure functions that were exposed in API management. I then might build a consumer-facing e-commerce mobile app with Xamarin that leverages these APIs and data. But then there are so many other scenarios that are adjacent to this one, as I kind of alluded to earlier in this presentation. How do I track inventory? How do I handle processes like shipping? How do I respond to customer support inquiries? So if I can expose these fundamental code components, which are kind of the base of all of my applications that power these scenarios to the Power Platform, then a citizen developer could go and build an inventory app with Power Apps, a conversational bot for talking with customers with Power Virtual Agents, or automate some workflows with Power Automate. And that's all using those same pro developer APIs that are all powered using that native mobile app. So that's a great example of kind of how all these things flow together when you architect your entire app scenario around this concept of code components. And code components is really just a fancy term that encompasses these building blocks. Like I said, these are all things that when you look at the applications you're building as a pro developer, they exist in almost every single one of your applications, and they can be exposed to citizen developers to leverage in their applications as well. So data stores that contain data that powers my businesses. Haley showed just how powerful it is to be able to access the same data that a pro developer can via the Azure Data Connector. And that's huge as a pro developer, like I said earlier, because I don't have to go and do all the wiring between a database and a UI, which is a lot of effort and honestly, mostly boilerplate code. APIs can expose that data to applications and apply some business logic. So maybe this is a .NET Core Web API. Maybe this is an Azure function. There's so many different types of APIs, and they can all be exposed to citizen developers in the Power Platform with something called custom connectors we'll dive into later. And then, of course, the UI controls that visualize that data. Haley alluded to this, but you can build custom controls and custom UI for the Power Platform as well. So you're not just limited to the default controls you have within the Power Platform. And the really cool thing about the rapid application development stack at Microsoft is we really have like all the tools for delivering an extensive, powerful ecosystem for app development. Obviously, as a pro developer, I'm familiar very deeply with Visual Studio, GitHub, and Azure, but I've really recently learned how Power Apps for me can make my life way better as a developer. So Azure provides a platform for creating rich experiences with hundreds of managed services and databases. Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code provide me with the tools necessary to build, debug, and deploy these code components. And GitHub enables me to add source control and CI/CD for enterprise-grade application lifecycle management. And then wrapping all of this together, kind of being the glue for all of this application development stack, is the Power Platform and Power Apps, which is going to integrate nicely with all of these different pieces to enable me to build apps faster. I really love this chart because it just shows just how powerful this scenario can be. I don't have to do anything different that I do as a developer to leverage the Power Platform. I'm already using data sources in Azure. I'm already building APIs. I already have custom controls. I can continue to do that. I don't have to do anything special or go out of my way to support citizen developers in my organization. They're going to make my life easier. I just need to do what I do as a pro developer, continue to build these services, and we'll show how you can expose these things to citizen developers. It's literally a click away, and they can make your life so much easier. So that's the thing I really love about this scenario. This collaboration between citizen and pro developers, you don't have to do anything different. You just keep doing what you're doing. And there's a few small things you need to do to highlight these things to citizen developers in the Power Platform. And they can leverage all of these things to build applications as well. So we saw how we can connect to a data source in Azure earlier. But what if my data source has some additional logic we're applying with an API, some additional business logic we might want to throw on top? Maybe I already have an API that I built, or I'm building a new one. How do I actually get this into the Power Platform? And so I kind of alluded to this earlier, but you really don't have to do very much as a pro developer. You just build the API and do what you would normally do as a pro developer. So Power Apps has this concept called connectors, which are just a way of leveraging particular APIs in my application. And Haley showed off how there's hundreds of connectors there by default, both to Azure and other things like Twilio as well. And to expose APIs to citizen developers, we basically need to create a connector as well. And in Power Platform, connectors that we create as pro developers are called custom connectors. And so that may sound like really complicated, but really it's just a few clicks in the Azure portal. And all we need to really do is put our APIs into something called Azure API Management. And then once our APIs are there, we can easily expose those APIs to Power Platform developers. So by putting my APIs into API management, I'm getting a ton of awesome features beyond just exposing these APIs to citizen developers in the Power Platform. I'm getting improved API discoverability. This is almost like a registry for all of my APIs. I get management for APIs across clouds and on-premise. I can apply authentication and authorization. I can add inbound policies like filtering by IP address. And I could even cache responses to reduce API latency. So there's some performance benefits as well. And there's also the option, once I get these APIs into this API management layer, to export this API to Power Platform for consumption by citizen developers. So my favorite thing is if the application I'm building is distributed within the boundaries of Microsoft Teams, I can build a low-code application that leverages my APIs and API management and distributed them to others at no additional cost. All of this is covered within my license for Microsoft Teams, and this will be available after Ignite. Let's dive into what this looks like in action in a demo. We're going to build a Power App to screen incoming travelers for COVID-19. So this is an application that we would deploy at a port of entry, such as an airport, and we would screen incoming passengers who are coming into the country for symptoms of COVID-19. And so this is an application that, when we go back to the segmentation we were talking about earlier, is perfect for rapid application development. Of course, as a pro developer, we're going to have to build some APIs, and we're going to have to use some pro data sources to actually store and apply some business logic to this scenario. But we're going to take a look at building an end-to-end application here with .NET Core, Azure, and the Power Platform. So here we are in Visual Studio. I've gone ahead and built out a .NET Core web API that's using Cosmos DB to store my data. So you can see here I have several data models such as port of entry, representative, and screening. I also have some API controllers that I've gone ahead and built for actually exposing this data via an API. And this is all .NET Core. So this isn't anything special I'm doing for the Power Platform. I'm just building my .NET Core web API. And this controller that I've done is just adding CRUD, create, read, update, delete operations for accessing and manipulating my data that was stored in Cosmos DB. So let's go ahead and debug this API. So I'll just hit F5 or hit the debug button. And you can see here that the web browser opens this swagger.json file. What is this swagger.json file thing? So this is something known as the Open API specification. And basically what it does is it describes the shape of what my API looks like, including the expected inputs and outputs. I can even navigate to /swagger/index.html. for an interactive viewer on my API. And the really cool thing about this is I can debug my API without building a dummy client to actually call my API. So I know for me in the past, something I've had to do is I've had to build a dummy client that actually calls this API so that I can hit breakpoints when I'm actually debugging my API and test it in a real scenario. But the really cool thing about using this open API specification is that I get this really cool API viewer that enables me to explore my data. So I can come in and see all my different endpoints, such as points of entry. I can see that I have a get operation. It accepts no parameters. I can go ahead and click try it out, execute, and it's actually going to call that API, and we're going to hit a breakpoint inside of Visual Studio. So by default, when I create a new .NET Core Web API in Visual Studio, we're going to include this functionality for you by default with all project templates via this swashbuckle.asp.NET Core NuGet package. So this is something, if you already have an API and you don't want to create a new project, you can actually include in your application, and it's going to generate that open API specification for you, that JSON file we talked about earlier, as well as this interactive API Explorer that's really great as you debug your API. Okay, so my API is built and ready to be deployed to Azure. So how do I get this puppy up into Azure? Well, of course, I can right-click publish using Visual Studio, and that's going to enable me to publish that directly to Azure. Or I might use something like GitHub Actions if I wanted to set up continuous deployment to app service as I make commits. So let's switch over to the browser where I've gone ahead and deployed this. So here I am in app service, and after I publish, I come right into the Azure portal, and I'm on the app service page for the web service that I just deployed to. The easiest way for me to expose APIs I've built to developers in the Power Platform, as I referenced earlier, is via Azure API management. And so as we covered earlier, I get a ton of additional benefits by doing that, like improved API discoverability and response caching for improved performance. So I can do some other cool stuff like version my APIs as well. So if I wanted to like evolve my API over time, add versioning, that's something that API management supports as well. So Azure has made it super easy for me to get this API into API management with this API management blade inside of the Azure portal. So within the Azure portal, I have a whole bunch of blades over here. And if I scroll down on my app service, there's this API section. And if I click on this API management blade, you can see I get this screen that says expose your APIs through API management. So this is awesome because it's a wizard that basically enables me to either create a new API management instance or selecting an existing one to import this API to API management. So what actually happens when I import my APIs into API management? So API management is going to look at that swagger.json file we talked about earlier when we were debugging in Visual Studio to determine that API shape. What are the different controllers and API endpoints I have? What are the different HTTP operations that I can perform for those APIs? They're all listed right here. It's worth noting that everything I've done until now are just normal things I would do as a developer. The next part is the only special thing I have to do to get this API within the Power Platform. So to do that, all I have to do is click this ... inside of API management and click this export button. And you can see here I have several different options to export my API. We can export it as an open API spec, but we already have done that. You can see it's already pre-highlighted Open API v2 because that's what we've imported this API with. But I can also click this button for Power Apps and Power Automate. And basically what that will enable me to do is select an environment to publish into and select the display name that my citizen developers will use to actually call this API. And that's literally all I have to do as a pro developer to get this API into API management and then expose it to citizen developers in the Power Platform. So I'm jumping over into the Power Apps portal that Haley showed us earlier, and you can see that I've added this API in here under the custom connectors dialog. So if I go data, custom connectors, I'll be able to see all the APIs I've exposed to my citizen developers right here. So let's take a look at what it actually looks like to consume this API. So here we are in the Power Apps Maker experience, and Haley kind of already walked us through this, how to add controls, how to view your data sources. But if I pop over into the data sources tab, you can see I have this COVID screening API that's been added as a connector. So just as Haley added that SQL Server connection earlier, and she searched up here for Azure, I could search for my COVID screening API if it wasn't already added here, and any other custom connector that I have would also be exposed here. And I just add it with one click. And now a citizen developer can call it. So you can see here's my Power App for actually screening incoming passengers. But let's go over to the screen data form. This is something that would be filled out when the passenger actually lands in the United States or enters a point of entry. And so, for instance, they might click the submit button once they've entered this information. And you can see here, all we're doing when this submit button has been clicked is actually calling post-screening data table on this COVID screening API, and we're passing in all of those inputs to this API, and that API is going and storing that data in Cosmos DB using that Pro Developer API. So it's really simple. This doesn't require me to be an expert in how APIs work as a citizen developer, and it didn't require me to be an expert in Power Platform to import this API in. So that shows just how easy it is to enable citizen developers in your organization to leverage APIs you're likely already building to enable you to focus on more strategic projects Haley covered earlier. And all I had to do was click that import into Power Apps and Power Automate button. So we talked about APIs and data sources, but what about UI controls? The Power Platform has something called the Power Apps Component Framework that's going to enable me to build custom UI for Power Apps. And so it's likely, as I've worked with many organizations over the years and many pro developers, it's likely that your organization already has maybe an internal library of components that are used throughout your applications. Maybe it's certain controls for displaying data, it's theming. You likely have a control pack probably within your organization that you're already sharing amongst your pro developer applications. And those can be exposed to the Power Platform via the Power Apps Component Framework. So the thing that I love about that is I can even bring in existing React or Angular controls via NPM and expose those as controls in the Power Platform as well. So it's not just limited to controls I've already built. I can also use NPM. And of course, I can also create my custom controls from scratch just for Power Apps as well. And there's a complementary CLI for creating, building, and packaging these components as well. So let's dive into a demo to see what this looks like in action. So we're going to be extending the Power App we showed earlier, but one request we've been getting from the staff is the ability to actually set a shift within a calendar view. And so this is a control that we haven't already built, but we might want to bring in via NPM. So let's take a look at how easy it is to take an existing React calendar control and bring that into the Power Platform. So here we are inside of Visual Studio Code. I've gone ahead and used the Power Apps CLI to create a new Power Apps Component Framework project. And so there are several pieces to the Power Apps Component Framework. Really, the best way to think about PCF is this is a mapping from the Power Apps world to the web world. And so really, I don't have to write a lot of code. It's really just wiring things up between my pro developer world and the Power Platform world. So you'll see just how easy it is to expose these pro developer controls to citizen developers. So first I need to map my control. So that's this index.typescript file. And really all it's doing, you can see this is mostly boilerplate code. And the only code I've written here is this update view. And all that's doing is actually rendering this React component using the React DOM for my calendar control. And that's all the code I have to write. And you can see here, this is the React calendar control. I'm importing it from NPM, from the simple React calendar NPM module. And you can see here, I've set a start date and end date. And all I'm doing is rendering that control with some properties. I haven't really had to write any code to actually build this calendar control. This is one of the really cool things about open source and the Power Platform is I can take all that open source goodness that we know and love and expose those controls to citizen developers as well. And of course, I can even style those controls using CSS. This is just a web component. So I can do everything I could do normally as a pro developer within the Power Apps Component Framework. And finally, I need to define this mapping. And this mapping basically is just a manifest that says, hey, what's the control name? How is it going to be exposed to people in the Power Platform? What code is actually included in this UI component? And then also, what properties should a citizen developer see when they're actually adding this control? So what does that property grid look like for them? And in this case, I've added a property named week starts on, which enables a citizen developer to select the day of the week that the week would start on. So maybe the week starts, we want it to start on Sunday or Monday. That's something I'm enabling the citizen developer to change here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit F5. So I'll come over to the debug tab and I'll launch Edge. And we launch something called the PCF control sandbox. And the thing that's really cool about this is obviously I can debug that React control just like any other React control. But this environment enables me to test that React control in the context of Power Apps without having to go and publish this to the Power Platform and then test it actually consuming it in an app. I get this nice local dev experience for building custom UI controls for the Power Platform. And you notice over here, data inputs, week starts on. That property that I defined, I can now go change. So right now it's on 1 and the day of the week is Monday. Let's change it to 2. And you see that the control updates automatically in real time so that Tuesday is the selected day of the week that we're starting on. So let's take a look at what this actually looks like to be consumed within Power Platform. So here I am within my COVID screening app that I built earlier, and I'm going to go back over here, and you can see I have several screens. I have my main screen, my screen data form, my screening data, and my scheduling screen. So how do I actually consume this control? Well, the cool thing is to citizen developers, it doesn't really matter if it is a custom control that I built for them or a regular control. I can add it in the exact same way. So if I go to this insert tab, I get all of these default controls I get with Power Apps, but I can also come in here and I see I have a code component, and I can click this calendar control to add it directly to the Power Apps design surface, and my properties will be automatically updated here with that week starts on property that we saw within the Power Apps component framework test environment. So that's a good look at how you can build custom UIs for Power Apps with existing React controls that I just brought in via NPM. So that only took me just a few minutes. It was mostly boilerplate code, and now citizen developers have access to a brand new control.
Thank you so much, Pierce. That's so cool. It's really nice to see how we can combine the low code and pro code into one app that functions super seamlessly, and it doesn't even feel like for the citizen developer that there was a whole bunch of pro code things involved. It was very simple and easy, and the citizen developer was able to take over where the pro developer left off. Let's look at a few of the things that we mentioned before, just a little bit in more depth, so you can fully understand a lot of the different capabilities that the Power Platform offers. Workflow automation, which is Microsoft Power Automate, was when we created the flows. So we clicked through within when we created the Power App to see some of the templates. Now there are hundreds of different templates, not just for Power Apps, because we had started in Power Apps, and so all of them were filtered by the different ones that connected to Power Apps. But there are thousands of built-in templates and actions for any sort of data source that you could have. There are templates, but if you don't see the template that you're looking for, the exact scenario that you're thinking of, you can build your own custom connectors for your own data, and you can build your own custom flows for anything you could think of. And so it works seamlessly integrated with Office, Dynamics, and Azure, because that's the point of the Power Platform. We sit in the middle of all of Microsoft services, so you can connect to anything, any data you have. It all works together. Everything is better together. So this is a huge time saver. You can do robotic process automation, you can do click and shoot, you can do flows, automation, if-then statements, just all with very low to no code. So this is one example. So you can save Office 365 email attachments to OneDrive for Business. And like I said, there are thousands more just like this, and you can create your custom ones if the thousands we offer do not encompass the scenario you're thinking of. We also have the Power of Virtual Agents, which, as I mentioned before, is built on Azure Bot Framework. So you are not going to lose any investments, any time that you've already put into developing it if you switch over and start using PVA. There are so many different pieces here, and like I said before, everything works together. It's better together. So within your Power Virtual Agent, within your chatbot that you can use to talk to customers, you set up an easy flow of if they ask this question, you can respond with this, and then you can even kick off with Power Automate a flow. So if they request an appointment, you can use what information they've given, how they are signed in, to kick off a flow that actually schedules that appointment for them. So there are so many different capabilities when you work with all of these systems together. They can also, of course, be used alone or together. That's the power of the Power Platform. We also have AI Builder, as we looked at before, but here's just a more in-depth look at what it looks like. So it's a very simple, less than 15-minute step process to get an entire AI model up and running. You basically select what type of model you'd like to run, and you train it with 5 or more documents so it can pick up the information that you're looking for. We have an example here of receipt processing, which is one of our newer ones. And so it's looking at the receipt that is a simple picture, which you can also do in Power Apps. So you can add a camera functionality into your app. That's one of the already built-in controls. So it requires absolutely no code written from you. It's already an option in Power Apps. And so you add in a camera control, and you can take a picture from the Power App of a receipt and use your AI model to read the different items on the receipt and store them where you want it to. So you can see it's selected in green, the different items, like the merchant name is Contoso, and it's picked it up and extracted those pieces of information. And so you train it so it's picking up the correct information, and from there it will store it for you. And so just 15 minutes, you have a fully functioning artificial intelligence bot. One of our cool new features that we announced at Ignite, and so hopefully you guys have all seen this already, but it's our Power Platform and GitHub collaboration. We don't have a whole lot of time today to talk through all of this, but I'm going to link some of the videos that we talked about from Ignite in the resources below that we'll attach at the end of this slideshow. But this is super cool, and so you can seamlessly manage your solutions and environments, enable everyone to contribute to CI/CD, and seamless fusion teams. So this is, I really, really wish we could have more time to talk about this, but please check out the videos below.
Thanks, Haley. And with the move to distributed work being accelerated by COVID-19, Teams is becoming the home for the distributed worker. And so the ability as a developer to build applications for these experiences is more important than ever. I spend almost my whole day in Teams, and I'm sure many of you feel the same way. So it's a great way to meet users where they are. And there's a lot of contextual benefits to building applications for Teams as well. So apps for Teams are cross-platform. They run across desktop, mobile, and web. I don't have to install the application multiple times on each form factor. If I install it into Teams, it's just there. And I can take advantage of collaborative Teams capabilities like calls or chat. And new at Microsoft Ignite in preview is an inline experience built right into Microsoft Teams for building low-code applications. So the really cool thing is by default, these applications look and behave like native Microsoft Teams functionality and can be deployed with a single click to my immediate team or to my tenant app store for broad distribution in my organization. And so by leveraging the code component strategy we talked about earlier, I can build apps for Microsoft Teams that use APIs hosted in Azure that adopt the look and feel of Microsoft Teams applications without writing a single line of code at no additional cost if my organization already has a Teams license. So in terms of saving time for me as a pro developer, this is really, really awesome. Also new at Ignite is Project Oakdale, which is a built-in low-code data platform for Teams. So this is a battle-tested database that powers all of the Dynamics 365 experiences as well as the Power Platform. And so this is also great for me as a pro developer because it enables makers to create data tables that contain both structured and unstructured data records in the same entity. So for me as a developer, I would normally have to use a whole bunch of different services. Like I might be using Azure SQL and Cosmos DB and blob storage and stitch them all together using code to accomplish the same thing. But with Project Oakdale, all of those are represented in a single table. So it's much more representative of a business entity than perhaps a typical table would be. And makers are going to love this because it abstracts them away from having to learn about database concepts. And instead, you can just focus on representing that business scenario. I don't have to be a database expert to build a database with Project Oakdale. And it's included with every Teams license by default. So for more information, you should make sure that you check out some of the Project Oakdale recordings from Microsoft Ignite.
Thank you all so much for joining us today. And I hope these tools sort of give you the opportunity to save a lot of your valuable time, and so you can spend your time learning and doing more things in your pro developer world. We have a few resources here to help you get started because I'm hoping that you guys loved this, and so you want to start trying this out. But how do you start trying it out? You sign up for our free developer community plan with Power Apps, and so you can get started. You can play around with all the tools we just showed you today. And we have below in the app in a day section, that's essentially a tutorial, a step-by-step process. It's not a full day of app building. It's maybe a few hours that walks you through all of the super cool functionality of Power Apps that we didn't have time to walk through today. And so you can build an app, you can do all the functionality that we showed you today and more. We also have all of our pro developer forums. So I highly encourage you to check that out. And we have lots of questions that we've answered, tutorials on how to do things, and demos that you can download and test out. And finally, we have our pro developer documentation. So all the cool things that we've released in the past that you may not know about and what we continue to do. We update all of our documentation so that you can have access to the latest and greatest information. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Haley and Pierce. So this does conclude the audio portion of our webinar, but we are going to stick around for an additional 10 minutes to answer any final questions you might have. One quick reminder, our survey is located at the bottom right-hand corner of your console. Please take some time and provide us your feedback around today's session. Thank you so much for attending, and we hope to see you in an upcoming webinar soon. Have a great day.